The hull groaned under her gloves, a hollow, skeletal thing drifting in the slow tumble of the toxic asteroid belt. Serenia Voss hung there, a shadow against the broken spine of the research vessel, her magnetic boots clinging to the jagged plating. The HUD in her visor pulsed red. Ooh, one. Level. Critical. 2003. Her breath came in sharp bursts, fogging the inside of her mask. She didn't have time to hesitate, but her fingers still froze when the thing beneath them shivered. The shard of alien exoskeleton wedged into the ruptured bulkhead was humming, not with mechanical resonance, but with a low, insectile vibration that prickled along her nerves. It wasn't dead, not completely. She jammed the cutting tool deeper, sparks hissing into the vacuum, and wrenched. The shard gave way with a metallic crack, nearly pitching her backward into open space. Her suit's stabilizers whined as she caught herself on the ragged edge of the hull. Then the radar warning screamed in her ear. Red blips bloomed on her display, converging fast. She twisted her head and saw them crest the edge of the asteroid cluster. Sleek, black ships with the curling insignia of the black spiral etched into their hulls like scars. Pirates. The ones who had left her for dead years ago. The ones who never left survivors. A channel opened in her comms without her permission. The voice that poured through was oily, amused. "Permun schön, Serenia, and we'll let you die quick." Her jaw clenched. "If you want it, we'll have to take it from my hands after I tear it apart." "You won't have the chance." They were already arming their forward cannons. Her HUD flared with heat lock warnings. Everyone pointed at her. No time to think. She slung the shard into the maglock on her back, pulled a plasma pistol from its holster, and aimed not at the ships, but at the hulking asteroid drifting nearby. The shot hit a vein of volatile ice, and the detonation bloomed like a silent sun, hurling shards and vapor into the path of the incoming fire. The first pirate volley tore through the cloud, scattering glowing debris. Serenia didn't wait to see if they adjusted. She kicked off the hull, spinning into the dark, her tether line whipping free. The void swallowed her whole, then spat her toward a narrow gap between two massive rocks grinding slowly past each other. Her visor display calculated the rotation, less than a meter of clearance, and closing. Miss it, and she'd be paced on impact. Hit it, and she'd vanish from the targeting grid for a few precious seconds. "You won't make it," the pirate captain's voice purred in her ear. She muted him. The hum of the exoskeleton shard seemed louder now, almost in rhythm with her heartbeat. She shoved herself into the gap just as the first laser volley cut through where she'd been seconds earlier. The flash lit the inside of her mask, turning her breath into a ghostly mist. The rocks scraped past on either side, their surfaces glittering with frost and lichen that would kill her in minutes. If her suit failed, the grinding noise was bone-deep, transmitted through her boots into her bones. Behind her, the pirates adjusted course. She could hear it in the shifting ping of her sensors, their formations splitting, one group flanking, another trying to box her in. "Come on," she muttered, twisting her body to angle toward a shadow in the asteroid field. It wasn't much. A crevice in the surface of a massive, tumbling rock, but it would shield her from direct fire. Her old clock ticked down 11:18. She slammed into the rock surface, magnets locking her down. Breath hissed out of her as she pressed herself into the crevice. The shard on her back vibrated harder, like it sensed danger. Maybe it did. The pirate's engines growled through the calm's low-frequency vibrations that made her ribs ache. She peeked out, caught sight of their lead ship swinging into position. The captain's voice returned, smooth and certain. "You're not going anywhere, Voss. Hand it over, and I might let your suit stay sealed long enough for you to suffocate in peace." Her fingers brushed the shard surface through her glove. It was warm, alive. She felt something like a pulse. The decision was already made before she spoke. "No deal!" She triggered the thrusters on her back in a short, sharp burst, launching herself off the rock into the debris cloud left by her earlier explosion. The pirates opened fire, but the chunks of ice and metal scattered their targeting systems. She rolled, dodged, and dived into the shadow of a tumbling hulk, a derelict mining platform, abandoned and half destroyed. Alarms in her suit blared about radiation and structural instability. She ignored them. Behind her, the black spiral ships gave chase, their laser fire cutting through the dark like spears of molten glass. Every shot that missed slammed into the wreckage, shattering more of it into the void. Her O warning went critical, CZO 3037. She landed on the mining platform's skeletal frame, boots clanging against the metal, and ducked behind a rusting bulkhead. Through the gaps she saw their shadows closing in. She had nowhere left to run. Unless... She twisted the shard's locking clamps, pulling it free from the maglock. The hum spiked, high and insistent, filling her skull. She swore she heard a whisper. No words, just hunger. The lead ship's cannon lit, charging for a kill shot. Serenya's grip tightened on the shard. If you want me, she said under her breath, you're going to have to fight something a lot worse. Then she stepped into the open, the shard pulsing like a heartbeat in her hands, and the Black Spiral's captain finally hesitated. In the space between breaths, in the silence between stars, Serenya Voss smiled. She had just become the most dangerous thing in this sector. Serenya Voss had once believed in stability. As a mining engineer for one of the largest interstellar corporations, her life had been measured in shifts, cargo quotas, and the steady hum of processing plants deep inside the asteroid colonies. The wormhole survey had been just another assignment. Dangerous, yes, but the kind of danger wrapped in contracts, safety clauses, and hazard pay. That illusion shattered the day the sky burned. The pirate fleet hadn't come for her or the miners. They'd come for the wormhole, a relic from an older age of the galaxy hidden in the asteroid belt like a buried god. The company had known they were coming. The evacuation orders were never sent. Her comm logs later showed the silent recall to corporate ships, every captain but hers. The others escaped, leaving her station to be gutted by boarding parties. Serenya still remembered the smell of burning insulation, the flash of her father's eyes as the decompression alarm howled, and the moment the viewport shattered. The pirates didn't even bother to finish her off. She had been just another piece of wreckage spinning into the void. She survived by accident and spite. The drift had taken her to a derelict hauler, long abandoned, but with enough oxygen and fuel to limp her toward the free zones. That was 12 years ago. Since then, Serenya had become a scavenger, part of the underclass that picked apart the bones of war. She drifted from belt to belt, pulling salvage from old battlefields, derelicts, and graveyards of ships no one cared to claim. She traded with smugglers, paid protection to mercenary gangs, and stayed one jump ahead of the people who still wanted her dead. Outwardly, she was nothing more than another scav rat living on the fringes. Inwardly, she was still hunting the wormhole. Every scrap of data, every rumor from the dark channels, every whispered sighting of black spiral ships, it all went into her hidden files. She knew the corporation had tried to erase its existence, and she knew the pirates had never stopped guarding it. That made her certain the wormhole wasn't just some navigational anomaly. It was a weapon, or a key. Serenya's nature was pragmatic cold when she needed to be, sharp enough to read danger before it bit, but with a part of her that would rather torch everything than let it fall into the wrong hands. She had lived too long to believe in heroics, yet she still carried the weight of that day. When she imagined the faces of the dead, she imagined them in the shadows behind the black spiral crest. That was why, when her ship's sensors pinged a derelict on the far edge of the Clythis belt, she ignored the fuel cost and burned hard to reach it. The wreck wasn't like anything she'd seen before. It was enormous, a skeletal shape fused into the surface of an asteroid. Her initial scan showed traces of organic compounds threaded with metallic lattices. It wasn't a ship in the traditional sense, it was a carcass. Serenya suited up and cut her way into a fissure in the asteroid's crust. A helmet lamp swept over what looked like ribs, each one taller than her ship, and between them, a kind of armor plating that seemed to grow like bone. The exoskeleton was pitted from impacts, but when she touched her glove to it, her HUD flickered. Energy! Still alive, she crouched to examine a shard embedded in the stone. It pulsed faintly, a rhythm that made the hairs on her arms rise. Her mind leapt to the stories, whispers in the salvage bars about ancient swarm drones, self-replicating constructs that answered only to their hive mind. If this armor had been part of one, it was priceless. More than that, it could be controlled, or so the legends claimed. She felt the weight of the choice before she'd even pried the shard free. In her mind, she heard the thought as clearly as if she'd spoken it aloud. If I keep this, I'll become a target for the entire galaxy. But if I leave it, I'll let them kill millions more. She clipped the shard to her harness, pulse quickening. The air in her suit felt heavier. She was aware of every sound, the faint creak of the asteroid, the low thrum from the shard like the purring of some buried predator. Serenya began cataloging everything, the curvature of the bones, the fractal pattern etched into the armor plates, the faint residue of what might have been propulsion nodes. The engineering part of her brain was already mapping how to adapt the shard into her suit's systems. The survivor in her was calculating escape routes. The hunter in her was thinking of the wormhole, of Black Spiral's blockade, and of what she could do if she had an army that lived in the vacuum. Back aboard her ship, she stowed the shard in a lead-lined crate, but the hum still seeped through. A faint vibration she could feel in her boots. She sat in the pilot's chair, staring at the dark through the forward viewport. The wormhole was out there, somewhere behind the layers of lies and corpses. The people who killed her family were still guarding it. certain no one could touch them. Serenya's lips curled in a humorless smile. They hadn't met her swarm yet. Serenya sat in the dim glow of her ship's workshop, the shard of alien exoskeleton suspended in a magnetic field before her. It rotated slowly, facets catching the cold light, veins of metallic tissue pulsing faintly as though it still breathed. She'd run every scan she could, spectral, thermal, biological, and each had returned the same impossible conclusion. The structure wasn't just armor, it was a living network, dormant but not dead, its lattice threaded with neural pathways that could respond to stimulus. She touched the edge of the magnetic controls, sending a low-frequency pulse through the shard. The veins flared faintly, then faded, and in the quiet of the cabin she swore she felt something stir in her head, like a pressure behind the eyes. She pulled off her gloves and adjusted the sensors. The reading spiked. The shard wasn't just reacting, it was syncing, searching for a host signal. Her own brain waves. The realization tightened her gut. If this was part of the swarm technology she'd heard whispers about, the legends had been wrong about one thing. It didn't need a complex interface. It could link directly to a human mind. That meant control. It also meant exposure. She imagined the hive, vast, alien, and ancient, pressing into her consciousness, not as words, but as instincts and impulses, consuming her until nothing human remained. She shoved the thought aside and called up the ship's AI. The voice came through the overhead speakers, smooth but edged with static from the ship's age. Preliminary analysis? The specimen possesses a semi-living neural network, the AI replied. It is capable of establishing cognitive synchronization with a host. Depth of link will determine control versus assimilation. Assimilation? The hive will either follow your commands or digest you. Serenya stared at the shard. And you're sure I can't tell the difference until after I link? Positive identification of host viability occurs only upon connection. This is a double-edged blade, Serenya Voss. It will crown you as queen or consume you as prey. She let out a slow breath. The shard hummed faintly as though amused. Before she could respond, the proximity alarm blared. She strode to the cockpit and dropped into the pilot's chair. The comms panel was already flashing with an incoming signal. She didn't need to see the ID tag to know who it was. The black spiral crest spun on the display like a predator's grin. She accepted the call. A pirate's face filled the screen, half hidden under a tangle of scar tissue and cybernetics. His voice was a low growl. 12 hours, Voss. You hand over the bone, and maybe we forget you exist. She didn't reply. He leaned closer. Refuse, and every free zone station in this sector burns. We'll make it slow, so they know it was because of you. The screen flickered, and without warning, another feed opened, a grainy video stream from a mining platform Serenya recognized. A group of scavengers knelt on the deck, hands bound, eyes wide. Behind them, black spiral gunners stood in a neat row. The pirate glanced at her, expression flat, and nodded off screen. The gunners opened fire. The feed cut to static. Serenya's hands tightened on the armrests until the metal creaked. She spoke evenly. You're going to regret showing me that. The pirate smiled, all teeth. We don't need you, Voss. We only need what you're holding. She leaned forward until her reflection caught in the dark of his eyes. You're wrong. This thing chooses its master, and it just chose me. For a moment, there was silence on the channel. Then his expression hardened. 12 hours, he repeated, and the feed died. The cabin fell quiet. You only sound the low thrum of the shard in the workshop, like a second heartbeat. Serenya sat still, her mind racing. 12 hours! They'd be watching every dock, every jump point. She could run, but they'd follow. She could hide, but they'd burn everything in their path until she surfaced. That left only one option, make herself dangerous enough that they wouldn't dare. She went back to the workshop, stood over the shard, and studied it. The temptation was immediate and sharp. If she linked, she could summon the swarm. She could strike at Black Spiral before they struck her. But the risk loomed just as large, losing herself to the hive, becoming its puppet or its first meal in millennia. She touched the magnetic controls again, sending another pulse. This time the shard responded with a surge of light along its veins, and she felt it more clearly, an echo of hunger, curiosity, and something like recognition. It was waiting for her decision. The AI broke the silence. You are considering it. I'm considering not letting them kill anyone else because I was too afraid to try. Statistical probability of survival if Link is hostile, less than 13%. And if I do nothing? A pause. Probability of sector-wide slaughter, 97%. She laughed once, bitterly. Guess we know which side the math's on. She powered down the lights in the workshop, leaving only the shard's faint glow. It pulsed slowly, as if in sync with her breathing. 12 hours. Enough time to prepare. enough time to decide if she was going to step into the hive's shadow or force it. To stand in hers! Serenia stood in the center of her ship's cramped cargo bay, the air cold enough to mist her breath, the shard of alien exoskeleton locked into the chest plate of the suit she had spent the last 6 hours building. Her hands moved in practice, mechanical precision, sealing the last clamps, connecting power feeds, weaving her ship's sensor arrays into the alien neural mesh. Every movement came with the heavy awareness that there would be no undoing this once she started. She stepped into the frame of the armor, its segmented plates folding over her shoulders and limbs. The exoskeleton surface was warm, almost alive, and as the final seal closed over her spine, the first surge of connection hit her like a lightning strike. Pain tore through her nervous system, not sharp and fleeting, but deep, as though thousands of heated needles were driving into her nerves, threading themselves into her mind. She gritted her teeth, refusing to scream, her jaw locked as the HUD in her visor flickered and warped. For a moment she could see double her own vision and something else, wider, faster, less human. The hum from the shard rose into a vibration that filled her skull, and then the first whisper came. It was not words. It was hunger, raw, unshaped emotion pressed against her thoughts like an animal testing the bars of its cage, rage, need, and a strange, predatory curiosity. Her hands clenched involuntarily, the armor's claws scraping against the deck. She took a step forward and realized the suit was already moving with her instincts, the alien systems anticipating her balance before her muscles engaged. She forced herself to focus. "Initiating link sequence," she muttered. Her ship's AI responded immediately, voice edged with concern. "Neural synchronization at 30%. Brainwave irregularities detected. Cortical overload risk high." Serenia's pulse spiked. "Push it! Warning! Push it!" The surge of connection slammed into her again, stronger this time. She staggered, bracing herself against the bulkhead as images, no, sensations flooded her mind. She could feel the void outside, not as cold vacuum, but as a map of pulses and vibrations, every drifting fragment of rock and scrap marked in the swarm's awareness. She could feel them waiting. Somewhere beyond the hull, hidden in the crevices of the asteroid field, they were curled in hibernation. She didn't remember opening her mouth, but the words were there. "Come to me." The response was instant. Through the ship's sensors and something deeper, she sensed movement. Dark shapes poured from the shadows, sleek, angular drones, their carapaces black and ridged, wings unfolding like blades. They came in silence, hundreds of them, streaking through the gaps between asteroids. Serenia's breath caught. It worked. She took a step forward, and the swarm shifted with her, their formation rippling like a school of fish. The power of it sang in her bones. But then the harmony broke. The drones began to spiral closer to her ship, their wing blades snapping open, eyes glowing a predatory red. The hum in her skull sharpened into a knife. The hunger pressed harder, and she realized they weren't responding to commands. They were deciding. Testing her, one of the drones broke formation, streaking toward the hull. Then another. Metal shrieked as claws scraped along her ship's plating. Warnings flared across her, HUD hull integrity compromised, external damage escalating. "Ku, ang ment, ki, so," the AI barked, its voice loud enough to cut through the static in her brain. Serenia forced herself to inhale, the pain and pressure nearly blinding her. "No, they're learning." Her own voice came out as a growl. "Ka, kun, chung, hun, chung, kush, shun, toi." She closed her eyes and reached for something deeper than thought. Fear, rage. She remembered the faces in the execution video, the black spiral crest burned into their last moments. She fed that fury into the link, shaping it into a blade. The swarm recoiled. The clawing at her hull stopped. Then, slowly, they drew back into formation, each one locking into position with military precision. Her heart pounded as she tested their response, tilting her head toward a cluster of asteroids ahead. The swarm surged forward like a single organism, slicing through the rocks in a deadly spiral. The satisfaction was sharp and dangerous. "Formation stable," the AI said, its tone cautious. "Command authority established, for now." Serenia turned her gaze toward the far edge of the belt. The HUD caught movement. 3 small ships, black spiral patrol craft, sweeping the sector. They hadn't seen her yet. She smiled, a thin, cold curve of lips. "Let's see what you can do." She didn't have to speak it as a command. The swarm felt it. They vanished into the shadows, breaking into packs that curved wide around the patrol's flanks. The first ship didn't even have time to react. Drones slammed into its hull, piercing armor, burrowing inward. Explosions lit its spine from within, venting air and bodies into the void. The second patrol tried to run, firing wildly, but the drones were too fast, too precise, carving its engines to ribbons before tearing through the cockpit. The third ship managed to send a distress ping before it was gutted, its remains spinning slowly in the darkness. Serenia watched from the cockpit, her breathing uneven. The wreckage drifted past, empty and cold, the crews gone without a sound. She'd fought pirates before, had seen what they'd done, but the sheer efficiency of the swarm was inhuman. Even she felt a chill. "Status?" she asked quietly. "All hostile vessels neutralized," the AI replied. "Residual biomass detected, none recoverable." Serenia closed her eyes for a moment, the hum of the link still running under her skin. The swarm lingered outside, orbiting her ship like predators waiting for the next hunt. She had passed their test, for now. But the hunger was still there, patient and endless, pressing against the edges of her mind. It wasn't loyalty. It was recognition. And she knew that if she faltered, even for a second, they would remember what she was. Just flesh. The wormhole hung at the heart of the asteroid cluster like a wound in space, a swirling maw of blue-white light framed by jagged rocks drifting in slow, lethal orbits. The toxic haze from the nearby mineral vents shimmered across Serenia's visor feed, distorting distances and hiding the flicker of gun barrels mounted along the asteroid surfaces. The black spiral fleet circled it in a tight perimeter, 8 destroyers, a dozen frigates, and clusters of orbital cannons anchored into the rocks themselves. Any sane pilot would have turned back. Serenia tightened her grip on the neural controls, feeling the swarm's presence press against her mind, hundreds of eyes and wings waiting for the shape of her intent. "We're not going through their front door," she murmured. The swarm reacted instantly, slipping away from her ship into the asteroid shadows. They moved like living smoke, vanishing into crevices, darting between spinning debris. Through the link, she saw what they saw, black hulls looming ahead, the faint shimmer of shield grids, the pulse of sensor sweeps searching for movement. She sent a single thought, sharp as a blade: break their eyes. The drones split into dozens of attack vectors, each group hugging the irregular terrain to mask their heat signatures. They struck first at the sensor arrays, razor wings slicing through antennae, EMP spikes shattering relay nodes. One by one, the fleet's radar sweeps went dark. Frustration rippled through the enemy comms as they scrambled to recalibrate. Serenia used the chaos to slide her ship deeper into the belt, weaving between spinning masses of rock. Every maneuver was calculated, using the asteroid's bulk to block potential firing lines, timing her thruster burns to blend with the movement of drifting debris. The hive's whispers began softly, like a faint vibration under her skin. Closer! Serenia clenched her jaw. She knew what they wanted. The wormhole pulsed at the center of it all, its gravitational eddies tugging faintly at the swarm's awareness. The voices grew clearer, layered over one another, a chorus of ancient hunger. "You can open it. Let us through. We will give you eternity. You will command without end." Her heart kicked hard against her ribs. If she accepted, she could unleash the swarm in full force. No ship, no station, no world could stand against her. But she could see the aftermath in her mind's eye. Planets burned to bedrock, cities turned to hives, the galaxy drowning under a tide of steel and claw. The thought twisted like a knife. "Refuse, and they'll turn on you," the cold part of her mind warned. They were obeying now because she was useful, because she had proven herself dominant. But the hive's loyalty was to the hive, not her. The enemy fleet began to recover, shields shifting into a defensive grid around the wormhole. Time was running out. The voice in her head swelled until it was impossible to ignore. "Let us free Serenia Voss, and you will be a legend." "I'm not here to be a legend," she said aloud, her voice low. "I'm here to make sure no one ever uses you again." She pushed the thought into the link, heavy with defiance. "No, I will not become the monster I'm fighting tall." The hive's tone shifted from coaxing to cold, a ripple of displeasure tightening around her mind. For a heartbeat, she thought they might attack her then and there. Instead, she sent a new command, sharp and uncompromising. "Swarm to me! Now!" They obeyed, though the pressure in her skull made her vision blur. The drones converged on her position, weaving through the asteroid field until they formed a dark cloud around her ship. She pushed them forward, straight into the black spiral's defensive grid. The enemy opened fire, railguns and plasma turrets shredding the front ranks of the swarm. Serenia didn't flinch. She sent them darting in tight spirals around the destroyers, baiting the gunners into firing toward their own ships. More drones peeled away to harass the orbital cannons, smashing through power conduits and sensor housings. The fleet was forced to turn inward, collapsing formation to protect their core. Exactly what she needed. In the chaos, Serenia maneuvered her ship toward a dense cluster of asteroids just outside the wormhole's event horizon. She prepared for this, jury-rigging her reactor to overload into an electromagnetic pulse, strong enough to wipe every unshielded system within several kilometers. It would burn out her own systems too, but if she timed it right, she could take the swarm and the black spiral with her. The hive sensed her intent and screamed inside her mind. You would destroy us? After we made you strong? I was strong before you, she hissed through her teeth. I just needed a way to show it. The drones faltered, confusion rippling through them, but she forced a command through the link. Hold the enemy here! Every last one of them. The swarm tightened its formation, sacrificing themselves to keep the black spiral locked in close quarters combat. Serenia armed the reactor overload. Warning screamed through her cockpit. The AI's voice cut in, urgent. Reactor critical. 60 seconds to detonation. That's the point, she said, adjusting her trajectory to skim the edge of the wormhole. The light from the anomaly flared, bathing her in a cold, impossible glow. The black spiral commander must have realized too late what she was doing. Their fleet tried to scatter, but the swarm pinned them in place, drones latching onto holes, tearing into engines, detonating inside weapons bays. 30 seconds, the AI warned. The hive's voice was a snarl now. We will remember this, Serenia Voss. Good, she said. So will I. She slammed the final override. The reactor went white hot, discharging a colossal EMP wave that ripped through the asteroid cluster. In an instant, every ship, every drone, every weapon system went dead. The swarm fell from the sky like shattered glass, their carapaces drifting lifeless through the void. The black spiral fleet's lights winked out one by one, their engines guttering into silence. The wormhole's glow shuddered under the blast, its surface rippling before collapsing inward, sealing itself in a cascade of energy that left only darkness behind. Serenia's ship spun free, powerless, drifting among the debris. The silence was absolute. She sat in the dim emergency lights, heart hammering, staring at the place where the wormhole had been. It was gone. The swarm was gone, and for the first time in years, so was the voice in her head. Debris drifted in the dark, silent and weightless, the aftermath of the battle scattered across the dead orbit of the asteroid cluster. Serenia floated in a pilot's chair, emergency lights bathing the cockpit in a dim red glow. Her ship's systems were fried, every display frozen or black, the air thick with the faint, acrid scent of burnt wiring. The wormhole was gone. In its place was only the cold, empty void, a hollow in space where the swirl of impossible light had once been. She had done it. It was over, but the victory felt heavy, almost indistinguishable from loss. Her breathing came in ragged bursts, echoing inside her helmet. She reached up to disengage the seals, but her gloves shook too much to find the release. The armor, what remained of it, was fused to her skin in places. The exoskeleton's once smooth alien plating had fractured and collapsed, shedding itself in brittle shards that floated across the cabin. Underneath, her undersuit was charred through in patches, and where it was gone, the air bit into raw, blistered flesh. The burns went deep, each one a jagged brand seared into her shoulders, arms, and back. Every movement sent fresh pain lancing through her body. But worse than the pain was the absence. The hive was gone. The constant thrum that had pressed against her thoughts. The chorus of alien hunger and command silenced in an instant when the EMP wave tore through their neural network. For the first time since she had linked with them, her head was her own. She had expected relief. Instead, there was only emptiness. A hollow space where their presence had been, leaving her adrift in her own mind. She didn't realize how much she had relied on the swarm's awareness until it was gone. No more sense of the void as a map of soundless vibrations. No more hundreds of eyes watching for threats. She was small again, just one fragile body in the dark. And underneath the emptiness, a quieter, sharper fear. What if they weren't completely gone? What if a fragment of their mind, some buried instinct, still lived in her? What if the silence was only them waiting? Her ship's AI, running on the weakest reserve of emergency power, crackled through the comms, its voice slow and static-ridden. Ko, ho, ko. Serenia let out a hollow laugh, not from amusement, but from the sheer absurdity of it. I also lost part of myself, she said quietly. Not sure what's left is worth much. There was no answer. The AI's processors were too damaged to respond without delay. Outside the viewport, fragments of destroyed pirate ships spun lazily, their hulls dark and cold. The swarm's bodies were out there too, inert and broken, their black carapaces catching what little light filtered from distant stars. Serenia couldn't tell if she was looking at enemies or soldiers. Maybe both. She unbuckled herself from the chair with slow, deliberate movements, each shift of muscle pulling at the burned flesh under the ruined armor. The cabin was nearly weightless now, systems too weak to maintain artificial gravity. She pushed herself toward the rear compartment where the lead-lined crate sat strapped to the bulkhead. It had survived the blast, the seals still intact. Inside was the small piece she had cut from the exoskeleton before the battle, a shard no bigger than her palm, etched with faint patterns that glimmered in the dim light. She unlatched the crate and held the shard up between her fingers. Oh! It was warm, not with life, not like before, but with something else, residual heat, maybe, or the memory of it. She stared at it for a long time, wondering if she was holding a warning or a promise. The AI's voice returned, faint, as though speaking from far away. Status, critical. Recommend, distress beacon. Serenia didn't answer right away. Her mind was still circling the same unanswerable question. If the hive had taken something from her, had they left something behind in its place? She closed a fist around the shard. Send the beacon, she said finally. Someone will come. They always do. As the AI complied, she drifted back toward the cockpit, clutching the shard like a talisman. The silence pressed in, heavy but not yet unbearable. She didn't know if she'd done the right thing. She only knew she'd done the only thing she could live with. Somewhere out there in the space between stars, other threats would rise. Maybe she would be ready. Maybe she wouldn't. Either way, she would carry the cost of this day with her. And in her palm, the shard pulsed once, so faintly she could almost believe she imagined it. In the weeks that followed, the story of Serenia Voss spread through the free zones like a solar flare, fast, bright, and impossible to ignore. To some, she was a savior, the lone scavenger who had broken the black spiral's stranglehold on the wormhole and sealed it forever. To others, she was something darker, a woman who had worn the hive's crown, commanded its swarm, and destroyed it in the same breath. They called her many things, the last queen, the betrayer, the caller of the swarm. None of the names were entirely wrong. In the crowded salvage bars and dusty docks, her legend grew in retelling. Some swore they'd seen her ship drifting at the edge of a dead system, her hull still scarred from the battle. Others claimed she still carried a piece of the swarm inside her, a remnant of the hive whispering in her sleep, waiting for the chance to return. There were those who believed she had made the ultimate sacrifice, and those who thought she had simply traded one form of control for another. Serenia herself stayed silent. She avoided the busy lanes and the calm chatter, moving along forgotten routes where no one would think to look. The shard of exoskeleton she kept in her pocket was a weight she never put down, a reminder that victory and loss were often the same thing, only told from different sides of the story. The truth, she knew, was complicated. She had saved billions from the hive's hunger, yes. She had also destroyed the only force in the galaxy that had ever fought at her side without hesitation. She had betrayed her most dangerous ally to protect the strangers who would never know her name. The decision had been clear in the moment. Living with it was something else entirely. Late in the cycle, when the ship was quiet and the void pressed in from every side, she would find herself turning the shard over in her hand, tracing the patterns with her thumb. Sometimes she imagined she felt warmth there, the ghost of the hum that had once filled her mind. Sometimes she almost wished it would return, just so she could be sure she wasn't imagining it. She had learned something from all of it, though she wasn't sure the galaxy would understand. Power was never about how much you could hold on to. It was about what you chose to let go of. And the moment you believed you could keep everything, you'd already lost yourself. If someone asked her to put it into words, she would have said, power isn't there to keep everything, but to choose what's worth keeping. And if winning forces you to betray the one thing that trusted you most, make damn sure your reason is worth the cost. She wondered sometimes how many people could live by that. How many could stand in the place she had stood, with the universe leaning on their choice, and still walk away without clutching at the power in their hands. And she wondered, too, whether she would have made the same choice if the swarm had been just a little less monstrous, or if it had asked a little less of her. The question she left unspoken hung in her mind like a beacon in dark space. If, to save the world you had to kill the only ally that ever saved your life, would you do it? She knew her answer. She also knew it had changed her in ways she couldn't undo. Somewhere far behind her, in the debris field where the wormhole had once pulsed, there was only silence now. But sometimes, as she drifted through the black between systems, she would catch the faintest echo in the back of her skull, a vibration, almost too light to notice, like the brush of wings in a vacuum. She told herself it was nothing. She told herself she was free, and yet, when she was alone, she would find herself listening for it. Out in the farthest reaches, where stars were little more than cold pinpricks against the endless dark, Serenia's ship slid silently through the void. No beacon, no transponder, just another ghost in the lanes. The legends would keep talking about her, some calling her savior, some warning that she was only waiting for the right moment to call the swarm again. But the truth, like the woman herself, had already slipped beyond their reach. and in a sector so far removed from their voices that no signal could carry, a faint, almost imperceptible sound stirred in the static, a distant insectile whisper curling through the dark.